When you start on a script with something the scale of Justice League, are you starting from
on Justice
artwork?
League? Justice League was Chris Terrio, and I. After Batman vs Superman, we had talked about what Justice League would be. We kind of, it's called Dawn of Justice, right? So, and the studio was they wanted Justice League, what was where we were going. And so
you knew you had the connective tissue.
We always had our eye on the Justice League kind of concept, as we were working. And so I believe we had an outline for Justice League that we just kind of generated while we were writing Batman vs Superman, just kind of like over to the side. Because we wanted to be sure we were supporting this long look with what we were writing for Batman vs Superman. And there's all this weirdness in Batman vs Superman anyway that eventually would make its way into Justice League that I was really adamant about, post-apocalyptic or any of that stuff, or I was really like, I really want to do this. When Darkseid destroys Earth, we're going to have 10 years of no Earth. So we should figure out what Batman's doing. Yeah, in the Road Warrior Earth. What is Batman in Road Warrior? So that was kind of like a big thing to me. That was the thing I really wanted to get to. And so Chris and I worked really diligently, and then to have a document that and it wasn't a secret document, but it was kind of our own. There was a lot of it that we constantly were developing. And then right near the end of finishing Batman vs Superman, when I was kind of like the editing responsibilities had kind of, just diminished a little bit, we really started working, on Justice League. And Chris is a really incredible writer, and he's very beautifully manic in his style. I remember he had like a lot of Diet Coke, a lot of Post-it notes, like the Post-it notes, but they were in this massive baggie. It looked like a drug dealer. It looked like a kilo of cocaine or something, like in his bag. He pulled it out, and I was like, "What is that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's the Post-it notes." And then he started to try and
putting back up.
Yeah, but it was so it was very, and it's all like Yates quotes, and like it's all coolly bizarro. Like none of it, like you can't look at the Post-it notes and go like, "Oh, cool, this is a note for the first act," like a line of dialogue. And so the script for Justice League did evolve out of that. Now, I'll be honest that when the script, what happened with Justice League is we had the original script was much darker and weirder. And then when Batman vs Superman came out and the studio was like, it's not funny enough. People want funnier movies. They want funny stuff in it. We did go back and do a big kind of lightened the movie overall. And I would say that Justice League, my cut of Justice League, is in between I always preserved some of the more intense stuff that I shot anyway.
Yep.
I thought that in retrospect, they would maybe want. Making sure I, of course, had what was on the page, but we had this other script. I think in the original script, Lois and Batman got together, briefly. And there was like this whole, there was this whole other thing that everyone was like, oh my God, you can't do that. So we were.
By the way, I love that. I wish you did do that.
Yeah, because Superman was dead, and I was like, and Lois is a pretty amazing person. So like.
But it also brings her into the story in a way. It's complex,
she's
it's surprising.
Not really, we had written it, especially since I had Amy, and Amy's like a genius. I really felt like we should lean on Amy. Because she's just a great actress and like a force of nature. And so, and I just thought it really felt like and then I love the idea of like setting up this sort of concept. It's sort of like when you're, in a movie like where the husband goes off to war and he's dead and the wife moves on and then the husband appears.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not dead.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine. Like,
how do you deal with that?
Yeah, how do you deal with that? And that was kind of what I was super into that concept, that, oh no, Superman can be brought back to life. So now what happens with this? And it was that Lois was like, I'm still in love with Superman. You were kind of a thing. But then at that point, Batman had already fallen in love with Lois and was like, okay, now I'm like.
It's brilliant. I want to see that. I love that. Yeah.
One day.
That's super cool.
But so we had done the changes for the studio, and we had, And I mean, look, I'll be frank, Chris and I are not the funniest guys in the world. We're not like, we're not like awesome joke writers.
I don't know. I'm laughing a lot
100%.
listening. I'm laughing a lot listening to you. I'll say that. But it's, yeah, it's
I'm
fun.
100%. I'm just 100% honest about that. And we had Ezra, and Ezra's pretty.
Right.
He's pretty funny.
Improver.
And so, yeah, he's kind of like that was kind of his role, to be the Flash and kind of be young and kind of be
the comic relief guy
a
who
little
comes in
irreverent
and
and not quite understanding, and kind of like in awe of Batman and Superman. And he did a great job, and that part was great. But I do think that the process, and it's just a classic studio Hollywood process. In their defense, they only can react to what they react to. Like originally we had talked about doing it as it was going to be 6 parts released separately, but then there was like some, legal rules about like
what you could do.
Everyone thought it was a TV show.
Cast
suddenly,
contracts and all that stuff.
You had to pay everyone like 6 times, and everyone was like, don't do that.
Yeah.
They were talking about Jared Leto's performance, and Jared never does the same thing twice.
Right.
Really, Jared's pretty. Actually, now that you mention it, I forgot about my experience with Jared doing the Joker, and it was amazing. But he had the script, but he really built the thing. Like he would go, and I'd say, "Oh, that was cool," but I'm not sure that one idea there. Could you bring that earlier? And he would do it, but it would then the end would be a little different. It always kind of he'd always get there to the end, but there'd be some.
It's a journey. What's your process like with reshoots? Because I've heard stories where you'll get people come over to the house and you just shoot things in the backyard.
I did that on Justice League. I had never really reshot anything. We did a reshoot on Sucker Punch that we didn't use.
Yeah.
I had never had a reshoot until Justice League. And that was really more about filling out some of the ideas from the original idea. And so there was a bunch of, and at that time it was, COVID had started and the studio was, we had a certain amount of money to do it, and there was no really reshoots in the budget. So I just was like, well, I'll just do it myself, just have the guys come over and we'll just shoot something here in the yard. I did a fair amount of that. Wasn't like real scenes. It was just like little
pieces
piece here and there.
Transitional pieces.
Yeah, I feel like you could do that. I've never had to do that, but it seems like a really easy with a small, setup. You can do a lot of that if you felt like Batman vs Superman. I think is a perfect example of there was no plan for a director's cut except for home video in the day. They would always come to me because those director's cuts, even like on Batman vs Superman, it's some outrageous amount of the total after theatrical release was generated by the director's cut. It's like 80% of all the revenue came from the director's cut. And Justice League, frankly, wouldn't exist if I hadn't really had that as the movie that I really wanted to make. I'm a huge fan of myth, and I love mythology, and I believe mythology is relatable because it's collective, sort of archetypal experiences that people have anywhere in the world and have had for thousands of years. And so, the sort of Joseph Campbellian archetypes are a thing that I'm really have always been a huge fan of. And I guess I fall naturally into sort of this, like I said, into this sort of mythological sort of filmmaking realm. Although I do think that my natural tendencies are kind of dark. It's just like I don't, And
you have a darker vision of mythology. You're attracted to Icarus. You're attracted to
100%.
What is the flaw in this mythology that makes it more complex?
And deconstruction is a thing that I'm a big fan of because I think that it goes in a circle. When you deconstruct something, you actually figure out why it works. You know what I mean? It's like just a thing that I've always been into.